Hello, I'm Amber Bone. This is Game Journalism Network. Joining me for a special live game journalism talk / conversation is John Smith. John, say hello.
Hello.
All right. So pretty much what this discussion is going to be about, and this is not just you, John. This is actually for everybody who will be watching this stream in some way, shape, or form. We're going to be discussing Game Journalism 2.0. Now, before we get into that, we have a couple of quick announcements that we need to address about Game Journalism Network. First of all, we do have an official website now, gamejournalism.net. The website is still under construction, so please pardon the dust and the wet paint, but we're still working on that. By the way, when I say we, I'm talking about people working with Game Journalism Network. John does not necessarily represent Game Journalism Network unless he wants to join us for any reason whatsoever. That's up to him. Aside from that, we also have a couple more announcements with Game Journalism Network. We are still doing Airplay 2. Airplay 2 is still happening. That's still being worked on in multiple ways. John is also helping us out with that. Full disclosure, I've met with John a couple of months ago about the original Airplay and have helped him out. At the same time, he's helped me out in different ways. Hopefully nothing to that degree. I'm sorry, getting feedback a little bit. Is that me or you?
I have everything muted and I don't see anything coming through. I can mute my mic, see if it helps. Is that better?
That's weird. I'm getting music on my end. I don't know where that's coming from. Well, we'll find out what that is later on.
Try closing. No, I'm not hearing any music. Try closing a few of the tabs on your browser.
Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. This is live. Expect these kind of things to happen. Yeah, I found out where that was. I had another YouTube screen open somewhere else, and I hit the space bar, and that did something. But yes, we are still doing Airplay 2. Airplay 2 is still happening. More details of that will be announced on Game Journalism Network's official website, gamejournalism.net. Couple of things we want to discuss about Game Journalism 2.0. Well, we're going to quickly start at the beginning. Obviously, with this whole Gamergate controversy, there's been a lot of issues at play, specifically about ethics in gaming journalism. Now, one of the key things that Game Journalism Network has tried to do since the beginning was report on Gamergate. One of the things we did was identify what Gamergate was. Now, a lot of people have assumed that this was just a controversy about ethics in gaming journalism. Others have assumed that this was a controversy specifically about misogyny and all that stuff, you know, male gamers over female gamers, that kind of thing. Now, this conversation has had no end whatsoever, but there has been strides in this conversation with events like Airplay and various online pushes with charities and new ethics policies in various websites and gaming journalism news sites. However, that hasn't been enough. What we've done on Game Journalism Network was identify Gamergate in the most journalistic neutral way possible. That Gamergate itself is a controversy that encompasses a lot of video game controversies as a whole. Now, what does that mean for our coverage with Gamergate? Well, some people have actually stated us only covering Gamergate is itself pushing an agenda, which could cause some issues which we are trying to avoid. And yes, that is true. We have been specifically covering Gamergate, but Game Journalism Network is taking steps to step away from that. We want to cover other areas of gaming journalism. We haven't been able to, unfortunately, due to various reasons, but hopefully within the upcoming weeks and upcoming months, we can do more than that. There's been a lot of interesting gaming news out there, not specifically controversial related, but in various areas of industry. And that's what we're hoping to do with Game Journalism 2.0. We want to cover gaming journalism in the industry aspect. We want to talk about not just what new games are coming out this week or next month, or what new developers coming out with something hip. We're trying to also research the industry as a whole and find out if there are any issues that also relate to the consumer side as well. That also includes reviews. Reviews have been also a big issue when it comes to gaming journalism. There's been a lot of bias. There's been a lot of issues with journalists and reviewers reporting on the same thing, which could lead to an air of bias. So that's something that also we on Game Journalism Network want to change. One thing we want to do is an open review submission, which is something that we'll discuss at a later time. But we want to find out everyone's concerns about ethical standards in gaming journalism and what we can do to make Gaming Journalism 2.0 a reality. So let's start from the top. What is one of the key issues that has been an issue in gaming journalism? I think the first thing everybody can agree with was conflict of interest. John, that was an open question to you as well. Sorry.
Oh, I mean, I think Derek Smart put it best when people say that like it's sort of all boiled over with the Quinn post, and it's like somebody called the police because of a noise complaint. The police come inside the house and they find drugs everywhere.
Right.
So it's very easy for people to look at that noise complaint and think that that was the size of it and have that be blown out of proportion. When in reality, you have this all these drugs everywhere. You've got this big scandal, and there's people trying to hide. No, we don't have drugs here. This isn't what's happening. It's about this, and it's easy for people to for the media specifically to sort of push that narrative, especially when they're the guilty ones. But it's very vital and important that we have a different press, one that's honest and open and is willing to expose those sort of things, and is willing to be transparent and open about the way it operates. We see different sites like Tech Raptor or a Niche Gamer, Gather Your Party, Lewd Gamer, all of these sort of independent press, smaller indie sites that kind of come out with the express intention of living up to a set journalistic ethical expectation that don't have the sort of mainstream appeal that they really deserve, which is a shame because the way these other sites operate, I guess what they have sells. But it's very vital and important that an informed consumer base understands what these websites are, what they stand for, and try to promote them as much as possible. And I feel like
interesting because we also have a lot of people who aren't working for these websites or are completely independent who are adhering to their own ethics policies in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we have good examples of YouTubers as well. That Total Biscuit did an entire video on how to properly disclose and ethically do things on YouTube, which is a pretty interesting study because YouTube is sort of its own Wild West field that is kind of nebulous. Not everybody knows the ins and outs of it yet because it's so new. But there are examples of even people on YouTube. Good examples are channels like Super Bunny Hop, George Wheatman, like Classic Game Room, like Matthew Matosis, like Total Biscuit. All of these channels on YouTube sort of also come with this outset of if there's anything fishy going on, I'm going to I'm laying everything out on the table. I'm transparent. This is exactly how I operate. And
Right.
not all of them have journalism degrees, but they still know the basics enough, or they operate on some kind of base level where they're open with their audience and they're honest, which we can't say about some of these other publications.
Hello?
Huh?
Oh, sorry. Part of you broke out for a second a little bit, but no, you bring up a good point. And actually, that's something I was hoping we can do here on this stream was, whatever rules we set up, whatever ideas we set up, what we want to do is, Game Journalism Network wants to lead by that example in some way, shape, or form, by setting up Game Journalism 2.0. But what we want to do is we want to do something that I haven't seen anywhere else, the exception to the rule being the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics. Now, you can join the SPJ, and by joining the SPJ, it's pretty much that you support ethics in journalism in some way, shape, or form. But what we're hoping to do as well is we want to set up a ethical standard that'll be completely open source that people can take, and they don't necessarily call it their own, but it's something that they would follow as well, but specifically for gaming journalism. And that's something that needs to happen, which unfortunately we haven't seen it for a while. I mean, we look at YouTube now, like you said, it's kind of like a wild, wild west of this new digital frontier, but it's the same thing with gaming journalism. It's a niche journalism market, and a lot of niche journalism markets don't have their own ethical standards.
Well, the bigger problem with a niche market is that you have to have somebody who's actually sort of interested in that market to be able to actually cover it. And when you're interested in something and you're covering, and that's you have a vested interest in it. It's not necessarily an inherent conflict of interest, but it can lead to some. And for a lot of these sites, they have traditionally with a regular news network or the mainstream news, you have reporters and you have op-eds, and with newspapers, you have all of these people wearing different hats. It's very common to see people in the industry wear multiple hats. You could be a game dev one day, a YouTuber or streamer the next, which sort of leads you in a position where you're reporting on something kind of by proxy, just by word of mouth or whatever. But if you have a large audience, the question is, do you have to sort of adhere to some semblance of journalistic ethics at that point? Because you kind of have a responsibility, if there are that many people listening to you, to at least make sure you're not doing any harm to anybody. I think at
Right,
least.
no, and that's completely understandable. It's just it's one of those things, unfortunately, where when we look at the when you look at journalism, however, this is something that still happens, and everybody looks at well, mainstream journalism as this bastion of how this should work, and we still see the flaws every day. But the only thing we can do is unfortunately lead by example, and I think one of the best things we can do is an ethics policy that pretty much is both self-policing, but at the same time, we need editors who are on their game as well. But people should understand that, look, if I am a game developer and I'm also a writer on the side, I should not be writing about my own game. I should not be writing about my friend's game. And if I am given a story that talks about these in any way, shape, or form, it is my responsibility as a journalist, because I took that role as a journalist to tell my editor, hey, I'm friends with this person. Should I be writing about this? Well, in what level of friendship do you have? These are things that people want to know. And a lot of people assume, oh, just because I'm friends with this person, I'm going to get, piked and put on display. No, we just don't want that level of biasness showing up. We want an objective point of view when it comes to these stories.
An interesting point brought up in chat I just saw, just going back for a second to the SPJ as sort of an example of an organization that is sort of helping to make the landscape for games journalism better with some of their commitments after airplay, such as their commitment to a games journalism award. They commented that Brianna Wu joined the SPJ. And if I just want to clarify for the second that right now the Society for Professional Journalists is a trade organization, and it's open. Anybody can join, and it's more of a resource than anything else. If you're a journalist and you're a member of the SPJ, you have access to a newsletter and different. I think they're called communities or channels, and you can interact with different people who cover a similar niche than you, and get advice on how to cover stories or get.
You also get certain benefits. You also do get certain benefits, like if you're part of a chapter, it's easier for you as a journalist to travel from place to place, because journalists do have to spend a lot of their own money. So there's a lot of self-incentive discounts and things like that. It's essentially a membership, but by joining it, it's kind of also this mentality that hey, by agreeing that you stand with ethics, you should also be following ethics at the same time.
If you're a journalist, but the SPJ is kind of weird in the sense that they let non-journalists or people who support journalism still become members and support them monetarily, which I think is purely for they're just to keep membership up and to be able to bring in some revenue. They're a non-profit, but it costs money to live and to operate with a guild that big, guild that old. An interesting thing I brought up in my last video is that Koretsky had actually put a proposal forward, I think about a month ago, and this was during the Excellence in Journalism award show that was hosted in Orlando for the SPJ. There was a board meeting, and this is online. You can check all of this. All of the board meetings for the SPJ are hosted on their YouTube channel. You can watch the video. He put a proposal forward for a vote to change the name of the Society of Professional Journalists to the Society for Professional Journalism. And it was supposed to be part of a bigger move to move a little away from the trade, like the trade group, towards an advocacy group, which was really interesting to me. The kind of possibilities I could bring. And when I say an advocacy group, I mean that the SPJ would sort of be taking a more active role in stepping in and advocating for better journalism, which two and two together, you could see why somebody who's maybe interested in Gamergate would be interested in that sort of move.
Yeah. Are there any? I mean, we were briefly talking about this actually before the stream. What sites can we think of off the top of our heads that are actually pushing forward in these strides?
So I think
TechRaptor was one of them.
TechRaptor. If you want examples of traditional media like articles and all plain text and all that, there's TechRaptor. There's Gather Your Party. There's Lewd Gamer as well as Niche Gamer. There's a full list somewhere, but off the top of my head, those are the things that I can think of. I think there are just a few more I have like right next to me. Power Gamer is one example I see here, as well as Highland Arrow. This is all part of a. Most of these sites are gathered as part of a bigger push. There's a current operation in Gamergate that's called Operation Rebuild, which is solely focused on sort of the idea that you have here with Games Journalism 2.0, is to find the good examples, the diamonds in the rough, the people who are actually sticking to their guns and willing to be honest with their audience, and promoting those people, making sure that they get the exposure that they deserve, that could help them further have good careers and could be a very positive example for games journalism. If you want examples of YouTube channels, again, I would say channels like Xbox Ahoy, who does more of the editorial type of stuff, more of like history and little things like that. He hardly does news, but it's still a decent example. Channels like Matthew Matosis, Total Biscuit, Super Bunny Hop, Classic Game Room. I would even say Lazy Game Reviews. I think Super Techland or Super Nerdland. I can't remember the name of the site, but it's the one
Super Nerdland. I could be wrong.
I think it's Super Nerdland, but they've got like the floppy disk logo. They're a good example. Yeah. And there's also the network that Lazy Game Reviews is connected to. I think it's called the Retro Network or something. They're another good example of a site that doesn't really, as far as I know, doesn't have a history of flagrantly breaching just very basic journalistic ethics.
Right, and we even look at like recent Escapist has actually been talked about a lot, especially because a lot of people are saying, like, you know, they've been pretty neutral about everything they do. They keep their reviews very static, but they also at the same time, you know, their journalists are very on point. And when we look at everything that's been going on with Star Citizen, for example, you know, that's actually been a pretty solid foundation of how journalism is operating and how journalism should operate, because we look at an example where they made it very clear. Now, I don't know because I'm not at their office, but they have seemed to have told us, and I'm inclined to believe, that their journalists, when they wrote these articles, they vetted their sources. They made it very clear they vetted their sources, and a lot of the information seemed to have checked out. And as an editor-in-chief, if you're given that option, you know, you have a choice to weigh in on that. And he's doing his job by standing with his reporter on this. It didn't look like there was any malice behind this report. It was simple reporting on something in the industry. Now, when we look at that as a whole, we of course see, like, you know, the backlash from fans of Star Citizen and Star Citizen themselves. You know, threatening legal action through a website. Well, not actually threatening legal action, because to me, legal action is, well, here's a lawyer and here's a cease and desist or something like that. Not just, you know, posting something on a website. But they made it very clear they stand by their decision, and they don't have to reveal their sources because a lot of people aren't familiar with SHIELD laws. And we're looking at some people are taking strides in this magnitude. I actually have a little bit of breaking news, unfortunately. I never thought I would ever be doing breaking news on on any of these streams or Game Journalism Network. But because I'm going back and forth to various sites for any updates for questions or if people want to come in on the stream. But I just saw, according to John Bain's Twitter at Total Biscuit, it seems that his cancer has returned. No, the cancer in his bowel is gone, but it's appeared in his liver and doesn't look like it's looking good. That can be seen on his Twitter page, and thoughts and prayers out to him, especially, it's not Gamergate related or anything like that, just more so as a fellow gamer as well.
And just to clarify, the cancer that he does have in his liver is non-operable, and there is no cure. Life expectancy. Yeah, there's a twit longer here.
Yeah, I'm looking at that too now.
It's not operable, and average life expectancy is 2 to 3 years, and he's starting chemo again soon.
Okay, and I never thought we'd be doing breaking news like that. That actually brings up an interesting point because obviously when we want to do these new standards in gaming journalism, a lot of people are going to be wondering, what about harassment and things of that nature? And we don't harass. Journalists don't harass, but people have been, harassment has been a key topic at hand. But that's something that we don't necessarily have to report on. And that also goes into agenda-driven narratives, which needs to stop.
It's okay if an outlet like Fox News, it from the outset says we are a right-wing media source, and something like, say, I think the name of it is the Young Turks. They sort of come out and say we are openly a left-wing media source. Like, I feel like as long as you have a bias and you specifically and clearly state it and say this is what you're here for, it's a lot less egregious. Like, exactly what you're coming into and the slant it has.
Right.
It's a lot more slimy, inherently just awful when you don't publicly state that bias, but time and time again you show that slant, that bias. You let that certain agenda take over what is supposed to be fair, balanced, unbiased reporting.
There's supposed to be. I mean, the whole idea that there's going to be a level of bias, this is actually something very new when it comes to journalism. Like, people taking sides, one side's left-wing, but they say they're left-wing, one saying it's right-wing because they're right-wing. And yeah, I mean, I'll admit it, when we started Game Journalism Network, I wanted to report on Gamergate. And I guess you can say that is agenda-driven. I do agree on that. That was my agenda. I'm trying to steer clear away from that agenda because I think one of the key things we need to be covering is gaming journalism, period. I don't think there's a side to that or anything like that. Now, this of course brings up the whole, well, what about when we talk about people like Anita Sarkeesian, Brianna Wu, or Zoe Quinn, or any of these people, when we talk about them, isn't that pushing an agenda? I think it depends on the severity of the news involving that. Because if again, this goes back to the whole, I'm not going to attack my audience by saying they're misogynists, they're bigots or anything like that. That again is attacking an audience. That's also leading a narrative. But when would be the appropriate time to talk about these things without looking like you have a narrative? That becomes a key question. I think that's something that we all need to check on ourselves.
You'll have to excuse me. I was looking over some of the news with the Total Biscuit thing, and it kind of distracted me a little bit. I
understand. I have it on the sidebar.
It's just a little bit of scary news because he's a really good example of positive journalism, and to see that he's in such a I guess it's a discussion for another stream, but that kind of hit me a little hard there for a second.
It hit me hard too, because especially the other day I had a conversation where, I mean, I've never had the opportunity to meet Total Biscuit. I wish I could. I mean, he's someone I would love to meet or sit down and have an interview with in some way, shape, or form. But the other day, like, people were, I was talking to someone, and of course the conversation got brought up. Well, why is it gamers are harassing women? And I made it very clear. Everybody's getting harassed. It's not just women. And Total Biscuit was kind of a prime example, because when he was going through his first round of chemo, he was getting harassed online, and people were saying vicious things about his cancer. And if you're saying that that gamers, well, I'm not saying we don't do that. I don't do that. But I don't apologize for it because I don't do it. I'm not an apologist. But when you have people attacking anybody, I mean, he's a male gamer. I mean, I'm pretty sure, it's not just women who are getting harassed. Everybody's getting harassed. And, I think a key example is, when we see all these people getting swatted online, most of the time they're male. I mean, it's just, all over the place. And how again, this goes back to the whole thing of how do we report on this without looking like you push an agenda, push a narrative. I guess the only thing would be is like, make it very clear that we have to cover everything equally and openly.
That would be the approach. You got to make sure that you do that to the best of your ability. At the same time, if you're a small indie outlet and you have to choose your stories very carefully, making that expressly clear as well can help to not saving face. That's not the word, but being clear with your audience that you do have a limited amount of resources, and you're going to cover the stories that are the most important to the. You want to be as consumer friendly and forward as possible with your outlet. That's just rule one. You do the news for the people who are consuming it. You got to make sure that you have their best intentions in mind. So when you cover the news, you try and do it in the way that's best going to help the consumer, to make sure that they're the most informed, that they can get the information they need. So you take the most important stories, and those are the ones you run with. So if it's a very busy news week, and you have to choose between two pretty tough stories, but one is far more important, or let's say could have possible harm if somebody didn't know about the situation, then that's the one you should probably cover over the other.
Right. I mean, but this also goes down to timeliness, because in journalism, we're always taught what is the most time-appropriate story that you're going to need to deliver. Like, for example, when Star Citizen was really talked about in the past couple of weeks during one of those days, of course you're going to want to leave with the Star Citizen story over something else that's already been known about at Konami or different things like that. It all depends on what is the most talked about. However, there is also a level of importance, and that it becomes, if you have something that's different that no other outlet has, but it is deemed more important, like, everybody might be talking about one thing. Okay, well, I want to talk about Konami. Everybody knows what's going on with Konami, but let's say I get a sheet of paper that says exactly why Kojima left, and it's exclusive. That becomes a priority story because it's exclusive. You have it, but again, it also depends on what the story is about, the timeliness of it. There's so many factors that come into it. Let's backtrack a little bit, actually, because we're kind of going all over the place, and these kinds of discussions like this happen. But ethically speaking, obviously, reporters need to start recruiting themselves. That's a given. Reveal any personal ties in any nature. And if we're a gaming journalism site, of course, the biggest thing is going to be we have to respect our audience, which is gamers. There needs to be that give and take as well, because obviously, one of the key things that kickstarted this was gaming journalists attacking gamers as a whole, which is something you would never see in. I've never seen that in any other area of journalism up until gaming journalism. So this, of course, brings up the whole thing is like, what's the fine way to respect, your audience? Obviously, we don't attack them. There should be no reason we should be attacking them in any way, shape, or form.
I'm going to have to step away for a moment. I'm getting an important phone call.
No problem. If anyone wants to join in on this conversation via Google Hangouts, please send me a private message either at gamejournalismnetwork@gmail.com. You can also message me on Twitter at Aaron Pabon, at AARONPABON. You can also ask through the live chat on our YouTube stream. Back to a couple of other important announcements. We're going to repeat some of them in case you missed them. Game Journalism Network has an official website, gamejournalism.net. It's still under construction, so please pardon the dust and the wet paint. But we're going to have a lot of important things on that website, including news articles, videos, and a special review section. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different with this review section that we haven't seen on any other website, which is now we don't want our journalists at Game Journalism Network doing the reviews. We want you, the consumer, and you, the gamer, to be reviewing the games for us. This takes out any bias that may exist or may look like or perceive to exist. So pretty much whatever game's coming out this week and you want to review it, we'll have a section available so you can submit a review and you can discuss different things. We'll have more information available on the site when it comes live. But that's something we're hoping to get your input on as well. What would you like to see when it comes to consumer reviews? At the same time, we want more feedback so we can make both Game Journalism Network and other gaming journalism sites work. We want to know what's the best way to discuss live events, so just E3 or Tokyo Game Show. We were going to try to do Tokyo Game Show. Unfortunately, that proved to be an impossibility due to various internal reasons. But it's something we want to try and make strides for, and that's something we want to try and make strides for Gaming Journalism 2.0. We have John back. What do you think is going to have to be the most important thing we need to figure out that we should lead by an example of in some way, shape, or form?
For Game Journalism 2.0?
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is going to be, being an outlet that's covers things fairly, that has the actual ethics that some other sites don't, that is open and fair with its audience, that is consumer first in its views. That's not particularly hard or something that's, troublesome or bothersome to go through. You can see examples of sites that previously, were not taking the views of the consumers as seriously as they needed to and reformed. The Escapist is the perfect example of this. I think the biggest problem is actually breaking out and getting the audience that those sites deserves and making sure that they can sort of not subvert, but take precedence over some of these other less ethically clear sites that
Right.
they get the audience that they really deserve.
The thing is, we also have people who have distanced themselves away from the Gamergate controversy or really don't care for this nature, because there are some people who, to be quite frank, are going to these websites saying, I don't care, ooh, this new game's coming out, that's it in the story. And they're not really aware of the ethical standards or things like that. And I can't blame them, and you know what, that's fine. I'm not saying they're ignorant, I'm not saying that they're being distant on purpose. Some people just don't care, and that's perfectly fine. But the key important thing is obviously respect for the consumer.
And it's kind of baffling to see how some of these outlets seriously come from the outset that they have absolutely no respect for their consumer, or they directly attack the consumer,
Yeah.
which completely out of the Twilight Zone, left field. Like if you're a website and you want to,
I can't understand it at all. I just can't.
It's neither can I. It's baffling that they get away with it.
Yeah.
One thing I saw earlier in chat, or it's probably still there. Getting back to how you should cover what you're writing with your limited press is that Luminescent in chat says it depends on your writers. If your writers want to write about it, then let them.
Yeah.
And I think
yeah. No, keep on going. I'm sorry.
And I think there's the distinction to be made between war editors, op-ed, and the other members of your team who do that sort of thing. Could you just clarify for me, since I believe you have the better journalism education?
Well, pretty much it comes down to being very clear on what the person is going to write about. If that message is conveyed to the public in some way, shape, or form, then it's perfectly fine. That's why we have banners that say opinion, and we make it very clear on what their opinion is. We make it very clear this is an opinion editorial. A good example of what I do on this channel is I make it very clear when it is my opinion, and I make it very clear that when my opinion is different than Game Journalism Network's, because Game Journalism Network does not have an opinion. We try not to. Whatever opinion I say is my own and not the express opinion of the network. But that's how you try to distance yourself from those kind of things. The biggest issue is you have people who are giving these opinions, but they're still doing what they can to represent their website at the same time, and that becomes a problem. That's the problem we've been seeing as a whole. Now, journalists can write about whatever they want, and there's no rule saying they cannot do that. The only rules that are out there are, if you have a personal interest in the story that may be a conflict of interest or is a conflict of interest, you need to bring it up to your editor. But if you still want to write about it, you have to be very clear to your audience that there is some level of connection with you in that subject. A good example has been, and this is the key example I've always used, was let's say you want to write a story about the issue of airbag deployments with Toyota cars, for example. Okay, you're going to write about it, but then you have to go through these various questions in your head, which is, okay, well, do I own a car? Yes or no? Okay, is that car a Toyota? Yes. Okay, is my car a Toyota on the recall list? Yes. Have I been personally affected by that recall list? Yes. And that's when you have to bring that up to your editor. Hey, my car's on the recall list. What should I do? Well, what was the severity of your recall? Did you get injured or not? No. I just sent it into the dealership. Well, why don't you use that so people can understand what they should be doing? And at that point, these are things you would go with your editor and figure out where are those lines and where they need to be drawn. Now, this is a story you wanted to write. You're more than welcome to do that. But again, there needs to be that communication with the editor and the writer still. Because if you just come in and say, hey, I have an opinion piece about President Obama, and it's flagrant full of lies, and I have no idea about it because you went to write it on your own, but you didn't convey any of this to me, how am I supposed to know that? Now, of course, as the editor, I would not publish it because I have no idea what's in there. I have no idea what you wrote. But these are the steps that need to be taken. Now, then there's also that level of, in gaming journalism, no one takes it as seriously because I'm just writing about video games. But as we've been seeing for the past year and some months, that's not the case anymore.
A question I have is, what happens when you have a breakdown with a certain outlet and you know for a fact that maybe some things are just passing by the editor, or the editor's allowing sort of these things to happen? What kind of steps can a consumer take at that point when they know an outlet really is sort of allowing these sort of articles to be published?
Well, I mean, we've been seeing it with Gamergate, really, when you think about it. I mean, people have been calling them out. I mean, I'm not a big fan of culture, but people have been calling them out, screen capping them, archiving it, showing where these issues are, and some people have been trying to ask the publication, hey, why are you doing this? Sometimes they'll answer, sometimes they won't. But I think what needs to happen to prevent this kind of thing is that the publication and or the editor needs to be on a communication basis with the public. I mean, regardless of where gaming journalism network goes in the future, if the public sees that there is a possibility of an agenda or things of that nature, I would prefer and I would love it if they could message me and let me know that this is happening. You know, this way we can prevent that thing from happening. But again, I'm not someone from Polygon. I'm not someone from any of these other various websites who are doing this. We don't know that for sure. But the best thing that the consumer can do is report on it in some way, shape, or form. Talk about it if you feel the facts are there. And if you're disgusted by it, I would just say stop going to that site. And that would actually hit them even hard because, you know, less traffic means, you know, we've been seeing it with Gamergate. We've been seeing it with people talking to advertisers. We've been seeing it all across the board. So pretty much what we're already doing in some degree would be the best answer for that. I'm sorry, you were going to ask something. I was going to ask something too.
You ask.
All right. A lot of people have been actually. This has been one thing that people have been trying to figure out is vetting a journalist, you know, to bring him in and things like that. And this has actually been something. This is more of a discussion more than anything. Was how do you bring in a proper gaming journalist? The thing is, there's no college class for gaming journalism. I think, you know, you should have an understanding of how journalism operates. But a lot of people have been calling out people saying that they're not journalists because, oh, when you check their LinkedIn account, they never graduated a degree in journalism. But this becomes, unfortunately, an issue where people in the public are starting to understand how journalism works, and at the same time, they don't. You don't necessarily have to graduate a degree in journalism to be a journalist. You have to, in order to be a journalist, you have to at least understand journalism to some degree. You have to be a good writer, and you prove that by showing your writing samples. Whatever you graduated in, that shows the concentration of study you understand. So when you look at a lot of these political commentators or political journalists, if you see their degrees, many of them don't have any degrees in journalism. They've studied politics. They understand politics. And that gives them an edge in that level of journalism. That is good and bad for multiple reasons, but it's good because they understand that factor. Just graduating in journalism does not mean you're a journalist. Doesn't mean you're a good journalist. You have to prove it with your work. That's what journalism is. Now we look at a lot of these, like, gaming journalists who are out there. I can almost guarantee you that I want to say half of the good journalists that are gaming journalists that are out there have a degree in journalism, and the other half probably don't. The other half probably do have a degree in video game development, but they haven't developed a video game, or some of them have a degree in writing, but not journalism writing, but they're gamers, so they went into gaming journalism. Like there's different areas of that people need to understand. Again, it gets proven with their work and their writing. I rather hire someone who is a good journalist who can prove it from their previous experience, but who graduated in agriculture, than someone who graduated in journalism and doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
That seems to be something that's universally true for most professions, from what I've seen.
And this of course goes to affirmative action. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. If, let's say, gaming journalism took off at a higher level, and I'm not going to hire you based on race, religion, sexual orientation. If you do a good job, I'm hiring you because you're doing a good job. And there's no agenda behind that. There's no other reason behind that. I'm doing this because I respect the consumer, and I want the consumer to have a fair and balanced report.
I think you just committed a microaggression according to the
yeah, I did.
The university. If they want to, I don't know. Do you understand the harm you've just caused to the students there? You violated the safe space.
Oh my God! I'm not going to push an agenda today. I'm not going to push an agenda today.
Yeah,
I made that promise.
All right. Well,
no, but I'm a firm believer in, look, I'm going to hire someone who's doing a good job. That's in the story.
Yeah, and that's kind of how the cookie crumbles at the end of the day for a lot of people. If you're doing I think it comes back to sort of I think the word is nepotism versus some nepotism is when you hire somebody because you know them rather than because they actually had the skill or whatever. Is that the correct word, or am I thinking the wrong word?
I think you are. Cronyism.
Cronyism.
Yeah.
Why did I confuse it with nepotism?
No, it's fine. They're close enough anyway. But that's another thing with cronyism has, especially in gaming journalism and the video game industry, has been a very strange situation as well. Because when I think of cronyism with everything that's been going on, I'm thinking of a gaming journalist who's friends with a gaming developer and they help each other out. That I don't stand for. That I cannot stand for in any way, shape, or form, because that's a definite conflict of interest. However, a gaming journalist who's friends with another gaming journalist and they want to help each other out, well, it also depends on how they're helping each other out, because that's been kind of this double-edged sword as well. Is, oh, well, he's friends with this other person, that's not fair. Well, it depends on the situation, but as long as they're transparent about it, that's pretty much all they can really do. And that's been kind of a debate with when we look at the Game Journalist Pro List, because that's something people want to avoid as well. But again, how do we avoid something similar to that? Because when we look at the Game Journalist Pro List, at first there seemed to be this understanding that this was a list specifically designed for gaming journalists to communicate with one another, kind of like a private Facebook group for, like, filmmakers to communicate with one another, or union workers to communicate with one another. That's what it seemed like at first, but then they started exchanging these ideas and started all publishing stories at the same time, and that's where the line got drawn.
I think it's only natural for people of similar professions to have the same day job, have similar interests, to try and communicate with each other and form groups. I think the difference with it is that when you have journalists coming together and doing these sorts of things, you need to have either a third party come in and monitor to make sure that that doesn't happen, so they can whistleblow, or you have to have it public. That's kind of where the line is, if that's really what's happening, because you can't have a situation where you have sort of this situation where you've got certain people on the list who are kind of in this position where they're bullying people if they're not going with whatever the narrative is.
I mean, that's kind of why I also wanted to do these discussions live and public, because I don't want there to be this possibility of, like, we say something that sounds backdoory and then people take that the wrong way. I mean, I feel these conversations need to be public. I'm not a big fan of closed-door meetings unless you work for the CIA. I mean, at that point, I guess I can agree to them, because of reasons. But at the same time, these are things that we're looking at a consumer revolt at a level that's completely out there, and they want to understand what's going on. And I think it's fair that we show them what's going on, with these live streams.
I think it's a good way to stay engaged with your audience and having things publicly accessible for people to go through. I think the only problem with a lot of Gamergate streamers is they do have live streams, but they tend to be these long form, 6-hour long sort of things that the thing you're really looking for is only 23 minutes in, but you're not showing.
By the way, this is going to end at 1:30. By the way.
Right.
I try to keep these under an hour and 30 at most.
See, we have two people whispering at us now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Actually, I'm getting told that I have less time, unfortunately. But yeah. There's a lot of things that, of course, we want to keep transparent with the general public, especially with this nature. Of course, the only difference is if we get something confidential that we need to put for a news story. But again, that's done on a case by case basis.
Yeah. Like, obviously, you would if you have an anonymous source, which isn't always the best to use, but you have a source that you verified yourself, you know the person, and you understand what they're doing and what's going on, then you have to, and you want to hide their identity from the public for their own safety or for the safety of anybody else related to the story. That's completely fine. That's expected, even. But to try and hide things from the public and not tell it to them as it is, or what's going on with anything, it is very shady. It's not the kind of thing you want to put forward. And I would say, in an example of the GG model stream, if you want to help make things more accessible, sort of moving away from the anonymous example, but keeping it to a shorter format, indexing the video with whatever topics currently being covered, or trying to keep it to a script, not like an actual script, but like here's a topic list, so that it's sort of easier to wade through all of the topics being discussed. That's an easier way of helping people be able to get to what they're really looking for in whatever you're discussing, and just having better systems for people to easily find what they're looking for is one of the ways you could better publicly disclose what you're doing, or have things readily available for people.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And of course, these are things that we'll make formal announcements later on in the coming days and weeks for more people to come in and talk about it. And of course, the discussions will be mentioned ahead of time, and that's something that we're even hoping to do on our YouTube channel, is set up brackets that, or set up playlists that hey, well, here's where this category is, here's where this category is, that kind of thing. You were gonna.
I was going to say, great example is playlists is a great way to organize your videos, because you can click on a YouTube channel and you just have this fat list of different videos from certain places. And if I click the playlist tab and there's a bunch of different categories and I can find the thing I want, it helps a lot. It goes a long way.
Yeah, I'm seeing on the side chat that sadly this is not how most Gamergate streams work. We just invite interesting people and start talking. Well, I'm trying to step away from that. Argon and Angaron is angry. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm saying that wrong probably. I'm sorry. But no, we're doing a little bit of that, but at the same time we're trying to push this conversation forward, and that's why we're doing these streams a little bit differently. We're hoping we can lead by some example. I mean, when we look at how Gamergate started and where Gamergate is now, people have been pushing strides, but I mean, this is my opinion. I feel we kind of are stuck in this little bit of a repeated turning wheel a little bit before we go any further. You know, we got some mud under the tires, and we're trying to push forward. And I think the only thing we can do is just lead by an example and go from there.
Yeah, I think putting forward positive examples of journalism and trying to promote these people, as well as trying to break out to a bigger or more mainstream audience with some of our concerns, is really one of the better goals we can be focusing towards at this point.
Okay, we only got a couple of minutes left, but I think we covered a lot what we can cover. I mean, unless there's anything else you think we forgot about that we can talk about.
Not off the top of my head, but
I mean, if it comes up, or if anyone in the chat wants to come in and mention anything that we should discuss or try to figure out, please let us know in the chat or private message at gamejournalismnetwork@gmail.com. We're gonna be having these conversations later on down the road, and what we're hoping to do is we're taking all this input, all this information, we're gonna try to turn it into a new standard. We're going to try to put a new ethics policy that won't just be for Game Journalism Network, but hopefully will be also open source for any friendly gaming journalism site can take and use as their own as well. This is actually something that I brought up a while ago on a Reddit board, that I wanted to try to start a ethical standard gaming journalism group kind of thing. It's proving more, I'm not going to lie, it's proving more difficult. But I have been actively talking to Koretsky for both, you know, advice on AirPlay 2 and different things of that nature. And one thing he suggested was starting a video game community within the SPJ, and I think that's one of the best ways we can also start with that as well.
I think a lot of people underestimate the SPJ, or they're not quite sure what value they can exactly bring to the table. But there is quite a lot that the SPJ can actually do for us, and that we can in turn do for the SPJ. They're a great resource. They're definitely something to look into and study and see what we can get out of.
Yeah, no, that's really one of the few things we can do. On a side note, you know, while we're talking about that, AirPlay 2. I mean, I'm not sure how much we're going to talk about, how much we should talk about that. Obviously, like there's certain things we're developing with that. There's certain things we want to change that are differently about that. I did an announcement stream about this not too long ago. Pretty much, it would be vastly different, but at the same time, we want to continue the conversation more than anything. But a couple of things that we've been trying to figure out has been, you know, obviously bringing in people. You know, whoever wants to come in and talk, they're more than welcome to. But I don't think we should just have that one discussion. And I think one thing we should try to do is, and I'm looking for input on this, is open for anybody to come in and chime in and say what they want. I think what we should try to do is have multiple panels and talk about different things involving journalism as well. In fact, I think that's something you mentioned to me not too long ago.
Having
we should try to have more. What?
Having a wide breadth of panels rather than just the two focusing on. Yeah, I don't think it's. I think that I might have said that to you, but I honestly can't remember.
Yeah, one of us said it. No one's taking credit for it. It'll just be something that happens with AirPlay 2, and that's an end of story. But like, no one will take credit for it, and that's live on this stream. There we go. There's that. But I think that's something that we should try to have happen is multiple discussions and panels, and that's even something I brought up with Koretsky, is if we can like bring in someone from the SPJ to talk about standards in general, like ethics in general. If we can have a journalism 101 panel, because this is the kind of event that wouldn't just be open to journalists, because we have people who want to come in and lead this new charge. They need a place where they can learn this. That's not just at a college or university, but if we can have an open, and I almost said safe space, If we can have
You know, as polluted as the term is, it's not that bad to use.
Yeah, it isn't. So yeah, like hopefully we can have these debates and panels live in some degree. We actually have a couple of questions actually on the side chat about that, since we're briefly touching about AirPlay. Is there a way we can get AirPlay 2 to happen earlier than March? Yeah, we're actually trying to shoot for February.
Yeah, that was
the last time I don't remember. I don't remember, but I have notes somewhere about that, but I know we were shooting for February.
Yeah, February.
The only reason why I don't have notes is because I didn't think we were going to be talking about AirPlay today. Like, that's somewhere in a desk right next to me, which I can't get to. But yeah, no, we were shooting for February. I think the end of February.
And the other question in chat was, do you guys need developers? And I think developers are a great thing to bring in. If you look at Derek Smart's input.
When we say developers, like for interviews or for...
I think they mean in the context of AirPlay 2. I guess we can answer the question both ways. If it's for GJN, then you can answer that. But if it's for AirPlay 2, I'm going to say, if you look at the input Derek Smart had during AirPlay and the kind of perspective he brought to the table, it was very informative, very eye-opening, just completely different from what we normally see. And he put things very concisely, which was very refreshing. So I would love to see other voices within the industry, if that be a consumer voice like Mark said, whether that be the journalists, whether that be the developers, or even maybe publishers. If anybody who I doubt anybody from a company from publishers would really step forward and do that, just because of the kind of thing having somebody from a publisher stepping forward and talking about that is. It just against their interests really to say anything other than their ad campaigns and to fund their games. But you know, anybody involved with the industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually something I was hoping to do. Was when we look at the AirPlay debate itself from last time, we had, you know, people representing the pro and people representing the journalism side or the neutral side. That was supposed to be an anti-side. That didn't happen. And I would like to try to bring in a little bit of everybody if possible, but not just have a group of people representing one thing. But if we can have a group of people representing different areas of what happened within Gamergate and journalism, that'd be awesome. I mean, if we can get someone who would represent the quote-unquote pro side of the argument, we get one person. We get someone to represent the neutral side. We get that person. Someone to represent the quote-unquote anti-side. We get that person. Someone who's a gaming consumer that's been affected by Gamergate in multiple ways. We bring in someone like that. We bring in someone who is active online, who's been covering Gamergate. Like, if we can get in this variety or spectrum, that would help, you know, understand at a different level that we haven't seen anywhere else. Because when we look online, we're seeing people in so many different cliques and areas just talking about it in this own, you know, wind tunnel. And this group collective of voices comes out. This group collective voices come out, but we're still not hearing the individual. And that's becoming something that is a little bit of a problem. And hopefully we can solve that at AirPlay too. It just depends on, like, you know, whoever wants to come and step forward and talk about it, they're more than welcome to. Bucker 23, I don't think we can go earlier than February. February is like the best date that we can probably do it for most people, unfortunately. Again, when we have a more formal date and time set up, we will make that announcement. But AirPlay 2 is still being planned. It's still happening, and we will have more full announcements in the upcoming weeks. The website, gamejournalism.net, is being developed, and there will be a section devoted to AirPlay 2 where you will be able to get updates on that, hopefully on a weekly basis. As for developers for Game Journalism Network, I mean, we're looking for people to help develop stuff as content for Game Journalism Network as a whole, i.e., we're looking for journalists, we're looking for people to help develop web content, videos, and things of that nature. As long as they adhere to a journalistic standard, I'm more than happy for that. If they feel there's a conflict of interest, just address it to me, and we'll see where we go from there. On that note, we actually are looking for volunteer journalists to help out with Game Journalism Network. Something we're developing on, something we're working on. We will have announcements on that in the coming weeks. Actually mean web developers. Yeah, we're looking for web developers. If you can help out with that, please shoot me a private message at gamejournalismnetwork@gmail.com. That's gamejournalismnetwork@gmail.com. And yeah, we'll talk shop there and figure that out. A lot of people are saying, well, I kind of worry about Gamergate dying during Christmas. I would like it to happen quickly. Well, I don't think Gamergate's going to die during Christmas. It's already been a year plus, which is longer than most of these hashtag movements have gone on for. And with everything that's been going on and still going on, I don't see Gamergate dying anytime soon, unfortunately. I would like an end to it so we can continue doing what we're doing and so we can go back and playing video games, but I don't think it's going to end anytime soon.
And when you ask a lot of people like what the actual definition of Gamergate is, you get so many different answers. People focusing on the journalism, people focusing on, say, harassment, or people focusing on what they call the culture war. Some of those things with those definitions inherently just will not end. So
yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's for Game Journalism Network, I made it very clear. It's a variety of controversies. It's just the name that I got attached to it more than anything. And when it comes to the culture war aspect, there's so many culture wars that exist with it. But when we look at the controversies within it, I mean, a lot of these controversies do have sound backing. I mean, when we look at the ethical argument in ethics and gaming journalism, we're seeing it in different areas. And yes, that is a argument that some people are going to have, and it's an argument that I'm fighting for, to reform that. People are saying that it's gamers acting misogynistic towards female gamers. I hate to say it, there is some truth to it, but it's not as bad as everyone else is making it out to be. And there are ways to fix it. There are ways to change that. There are so many different sides to this argument that just need to be addressed differently. And Gamergate is just talking about all of them as a whole. Although, I mean, if we look at the harassment angle, like I said before, it's not just women, it's everybody. Everybody's getting harassed in some way, shape, or form. But there's so many ways to answer this. There's so many problems out there that need to be fixed. And, this isn't the first culture war that's had this happen to. I mean, we look at comic books, back in the 50s. That was a culture war that lasted, I want to say, up until the 90s. When we look at people saying that comic books were a cause of violence, that's actually went to Washington. They set up something known as the Comics Code Authority. There's actually, if you go on Wikipedia, it's actually the most concise thing they have on it, aside from other articles on Wikipedia. But 1950s, they went to Washington. They said, we need to do something about this. They set up a grade system known as the Comics Code Authority, that if this stamp was on there, that means this comic was safe. And if any comic that didn't have this, destroy it immediately or send it back to its publisher or things like that. This would go on up until the 90s. And it almost censored comics in this vicious manner. We look at games. People were saying that video games cause violence. People still make this argument. I don't know why, but people still make this argument. But the only benefit out of this argument we've ever had was the founding of the ESRB. Now people know what's inside the game before they buy it. And this is something like the MPAA. There's a rating system. And people will still say, well, kids are getting access to these violent video games. Man, that's not true. It's the parents that are buying these games for kids. But if a 12-year-old kid goes into a store and wants to buy Grand Theft Auto, he can't buy Grand Theft Auto. There are measures in place to make sure that doesn't happen. But people don't know this, or people do know this, and it just depends on the arguments being played, unfortunately.
There was a point I had somewhere in the middle of that, and I completely lost it, which is kind of sad.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, I'm trying to remember. How are we doing on time?
We got 5 minutes left.
All right.
I'm making notes and everything. So, but yeah, no. I'm hoping we can continue this conversation in the upcoming weeks. That's all we can really do is now. Hope. Yeah, I kind of started a hashtag for game journalism 2.0. If you feel this is something that needs to happen, if you feel that this is something that we need to put a stride on and whatnot, start talking about Game Journalism 2.0. And it's not trying to move away from Gamergate. I mean, if you want to see it as that, you know, it's your opinion, but we need to lead by this example, and I think this is the best way we can do that. So yeah, if Game Journalism Network is going to push any agenda, it's Game Journalism 2.0, so there is no agenda. That's, I think, the best way we can say it.
Just positive examples and better outlets.
All right. I mean, if anyone has any suggestions or opinions, please comment on this video post-stream or during stream. Or if you have any suggestions or want to help us out in any way, shape, or form, please send an email to gamejournalismnetwork@gmail.com. I think we can call it from here unless you have any closing statements or anything like that, John.
Do you mind if I shill?
Yeah, you can shill.
All right.
Like you announced that you're shilling.
All right. I just started today on a weekly schedule. I'll be producing and publishing videos on YouTube every Thursday. I haven't decided the complete topic or what kind of videos I'll be producing on my YouTube channel yet. But if you want to, I'll be posting a link in the chat. YouTube name is John Smith. On Twitter, I'm 38ch_John Smith. You can go to 38chan. The board is /webm. It's not public yet, but I'll be hosting archives of all of my YouTube videos in WebM format, completely ad-free and image board friendly. So if you want to watch my content necessarily without supporting me or YouTube, you have the ability to share those videos. Other than that, just follow me on Twitter, subscribe to my YouTube channel, watch out for more from there. It'll probably just be mostly my opinion. And that's it.
All right. I guess I'll do some last minute shilling as well. Once again, Gaming Journalism Network's website is live. That's gamejournalism.net. It's still under construction. Please pardon the dust and the wet paint, but we're still doing everything we can to develop the site. We had an offer for someone to help us help develop the website. Hopefully something happens from there. We're looking for ways we can fix on that. We're also going to be starting social media accounts specifically for Gaming Journalism Network. For the past couple of times, I've been pushing Game Journalism Network stuff on my personal Twitter page, but we're going to have an official GJN Twitter page and Facebook page, and any other social media you can think of. Please let us know on what various areas of social media we should start addressing. As for this YouTube channel, we're still going to keep it as is, but we're still going to be actively pushing for more content. One thing we're in the middle of developing, it won't premiere anytime soon, but we will make a formal announcement about it, is This Week in Gaming. It'll be a weekly gaming show that Game Journalism Network will be hosting that will specifically be covering the most important gaming news in general that happened during the past week. It's still in the development. If there's something you would like to see us cover or us work on, please let us know. Again, we're looking for different things for Game Journalism Network to push forward and to help lead the charge in Gaming Journalism 2.0. I'm Aaron Pabone. Joining me today was John Smith. Thank you for tuning into Game Journalism Network. Have a good night.